Welcome, I'm Katie, your host for today's virtual adoption fair. I am a Mickaboo volunteer, just like all the people presenting and producing today's event. Before we begin, let me tell you just a little bit about Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to education about and care for companion birds and to their rescue and adoption. We currently have about 350 birds in our care. We are a virtual all-volunteer organization with birds and foster homes throughout the greater Bay Area. We rely on donations to be able to serve the birds, and the vast majority of our expenses are related to their care. Our veterinary bills are upwards of $50,000 a month. These costs are so high for a few reasons. One, when we take in new birds, some require medical attention due to previous neglect, failing health, accidents or injuries that they may have incurred before they came to us. Second, just like people, some of our birds have chronic medical conditions that require ongoing care and management. Finally, I should note that all of our birds receive exams and medical care from our avian vets as it comes to be necessary. Just like people, sometimes birds have to go to the doctor. So if you're able to help, please consider donating to us. I'll provide some information about how to do that at the end of the event. Now, let's talk for a moment about the adoption and fostering process. After all, this is an adoption fair. First of all, the timing. We want to be really, really careful about the well-being of birds. So this process may take up to 12 weeks. You may be familiar with the idea of going to a shelter and coming home with a cat or dog on the same day. Parrots are different. They're not mammals. Their care is different. Their psychology can be different. And so we take a lot of time to provide you with the information that you'll need to be successful in providing care for these amazing, amazing animals. We're going to spend this time getting to know you, letting you get to know us and our practices and our values. So please be patient. The results are worth it. If you feel like you haven't heard from us, do ping us again. Sometimes things do drop by accident. So as you see on screen, this is our process. It starts with the basic bird care class, which is online. Parrots are not simple beings to care for. As I mentioned before, it's not like a cat or a dog. Some of the things that you may have an intuition for with a pet that is more common, that you may have had in your life in the past, are not the same for birds. So we spend time in the class covering parrot behavior, health and well-being, feeding, care, and other topics like good toys to ensure that our birds will thrive in their new homes. You'll get a taste of those considerations as we talk with different foster families today. After you take the class, you'll be able to fill out the online application. And once that application is submitted, we will review it, and then we will contact you to set up a phone screen. The phone screen is an opportunity for us to better understand you and to be sure that you understood the material that was covered in the bird care class. This is also a good opportunity for you to ask us questions that may have arisen for you based on taking the class. Then comes the home visit. This is not meant to be a white glove test of any sort. We want to see and help you identify potential dangers in your home. If you haven't had birds before, you may not be attuned to some of the particular safety issues that they can face. If you have had birds, you may just need a fresh set of eyes to look at things that you haven't considered in a while. Our goal is to understand your environment and to provide you with advice and feedback that will help you to make your home a safe and pleasant place for a bird to live. We're doing a mix of virtual home visits and some in person. And whether your home visit is virtual or in person will depend on a number of factors, including COVID-19 concerns, and what our ability is to see and understand your space through a video session. If your home visit takes place in person, we will ask that everyone be vaccinated and remain masked during the duration of the visit. And this does include our volunteers as well as the members of your household who may be present. Finally, once you've done all this, you will be matched with a bird or birds. We will work with you to find the specific bird or group of birds that are a good match for you. And you'll have chances to meet them either virtually or in person. It may sound more exciting to meet a bird in person, but sometimes a virtual visit can actually give you better insight into what the bird is like in a location where they're feeling safe and comfortable. So it may give you a better view of long-term what a bird could be like in your home versus at first when they meet you, if they're super excited or nervous because of the change in having a visitor. Whether the visit is in person or virtual, the specific arrangements will depend on you and the foster home and what you are both comfortable with and can mutually agree to. When it's time to transfer a bird to your home or related items like a cage, if you're fostering, we'll work with you to set that up in a way that is safe and secure with COVID-19 considerations, as well as safe and secure for the bird. So now let's meet some birds. Today we're going to meet a number of Mickaboo birds, some by pre-recorded video and some live and in person. So first, we're meeting Ruby and second, Harriet. These are two of Mickaboo's macaws. Then we are going from very large to very small with Dandelion and Lemonade the parakeets. We're meeting them live. Cinnamon and Spice, cockatiels, we are meeting through a pre-recorded video. And last, Yeshe and Chester, a pair of blue-crowned conures who we will meet on live video. So now, before we begin with our first bird, Ruby, I'd like to remind you that as we go, if you have questions, you can ask them in the Q&A tab in Zoom, or if you're watching on Facebook, you can comment on the video live stream there. We will do our best to address any questions you may have while we're interviewing the bird and their parent. So now, let's meet Ruby.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Sarah. So here is Ruby. As we watch this video footage, can you tell us about this bird? Do we know if they're male or female?
Yes, we do. So as Katie mentioned, we're watching video footage of Ruby today. We have a few different facilities that we use to help us house our macaws because finding foster homes for them is challenging. So we're looking at video that we've recorded of Ruby. She is definitely a girl. We know that for sure because she has laid some eggs. So we've got some positive proof of that.
All right. So we know she's a girl and we know she's an adult. Do we have an idea how old Ruby is?
We do. She's in her early 20s. So we have a general idea. We don't have an exact date, and that's often the case with our rescue birds for obvious reasons, but early 20s we're pretty confident about. So she's relatively young for a macaw. They can live to be well over 60, even 70 years old. So provided she's on a good diet and good health, then she's still got a long time left ahead of her.
Yeah, she could have the entire lifetime of an adult human.
Oh, easily. Very much so.
As a reminder to our audience, if you have questions about Ruby, you can type them into the Q&A on Zoom or the video chat in Facebook. So Ruby here, I see, looks like she loves to dance. Maybe a little bit of a headbanger.
Oh, yeah.
Is she tame?
She does step up. She will ride on somebody's shoulder and she will step up. Obviously, that doesn't happen overnight. You need to get to know her a little bit. But she's used to being handled and she's fairly well socialized. So yes, you can absolutely handle her once you get the chance to have her settle in and get to know you as a person.
Yeah.
Obviously, you need to be careful that you don't overstimulate her. A lot of macaws can get very overexcited if they spend too much time on your shoulder or hanging out with you, depending on how you handle them. You don't want to get them hormonal. Ruby has a history of becoming very hormonal. We mentioned the egg laying earlier, and that's that's an important health consideration for her because the last home she was in, unfortunately, they didn't understand the hormone situation. And so she laid about 9 eggs in the space of just over 2 months.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's not good. That's very risky health-wise for female parrots in general, including macaws. When they start laying eggs, we need to discourage that. And so usually by that point, that means getting the help of an avian vet who can use Lupron, which is a synthetic hormone, to try and level them out and get them back down from that hormonal spike. So she's had 2 shots of Lupron, which have really helped. And that has also made her easier to handle, because obviously when they're very hormonal, they're much, much beakier. They're much more hyped up. It's harder to work with them, and they're a lot less likely to negotiate and compromise with you. So she's really happy now that the Luprons worked and she's leveled out. She's happy to hang out outside of her cage on a stand or on her door, and she'll spend time with people on your arm, and she's feeling a lot better.
Got it. So a lot of us have a frame of reference with birds of like chickens who lay eggs on a regular basis, or the birds in our backyard who raise babies every year. So could you talk us just a little bit about why 9 eggs is an actual problem for Ruby, and also why she would get leaky and a little bit more difficult to interact with when she's hormonal?
Yes. So laying eggs, it's very different between, poultry like chickens and ducks and what have you, or even pigeons and parrots. Egg laying, your chickens they'll lay eggs throughout most of the year. And that is completely normal to them. And for parrots, it's much more of an annual breeding cycle. So you really don't want your parrot to be, it's very possible in our homes. It's obviously our homes are a very unnatural environment for parrots. And we have a lot of influence over what their environment is like. It's very possible, and we strongly recommend that if you have a female parrot living in your home, you should be managing their environment very carefully to avoid egg laying completely. And for most parrots, that is possible. There are some who have a lot of hormonal problems where it may not be possible, but you should really be working to minimize it as much as possible. It can be very dangerous for female parrots if they are laying eggs consistently over a prolonged period. Then obviously they can suffer from mineral depletion. And also they can have the dangers of becoming egg bound, which can be fatal if it isn't picked up on quickly and treated with help from your vet. And that can also lead to longer term issues like prolapse, which is extremely painful and incredibly dangerous for the bird. And we've seen many older birds losing their lives to prolapse ultimately. And that's not even specific to female parrots. Male parrots that are left to be in a super hormonal state for prolonged periods of time can also suffer from prolapse. So there are lots of things we have in our toolbox when we have a parrot at home. You can manage their environment through how much sleep they get, their diet, lighting, the layout of the cage, how you handle them. There are lots and lots of different factors that we have that we can use to influence their hormones.
Well, thank you. Let's see, I have a number of other questions for you. What does Ruby eat?
She's
it sounds like that is part of how you manage hormones, I think you just said too.
Yeah, that's right. She's on a diet where she's slowly coming around to pellets. She's on a mix right now with some seed and some pellets. So it's a trending towards more pellets and less seed. So her diet is improving. She's a pretty good eater. She's had a few owners already in her life. Her last owner, unfortunately, passed away, so we weren't able to get a lot of information that we usually hope to obtain when we take a parrot in and care for them. But we've just been slowly working to get her eating more vegetables, eating better, and she is accepting pellets. So that's really good news, and it's just a case of keeping that going now. The less fat they have in their diet overall, generally the better it is for managing their hormones and for their health in general. You don't want to have anyone on a high fat diet, just like with people. You consider seeds like more of a treat, maybe just 5 to 10% of their overall daily intake. Save those for when you're socializing with them or doing some maybe target training, you can hold back the seeds to offer by hand when you're interacting with them rather than filling up a bowl with them, for example, which would be a little bit too much.
So what does Ruby like to do? What are her favorite activities? It looks like she bops around her cage quite a bit.
Oh yeah, she's like a lot of green wings. She's pretty high energy, so she loves music. We don't have the sound enabled in this video so that we're able to present the adoption fair over it, but there's some music playing in the background and she just loves dancing. A lot of green wings will do the move that she's about to pull in the video where she sort of goes into like a figure of 8 dance move from side to side with her head sort of tossing around, and that is a really popular green wing dance routine. So she's got that down and she can do it for a long time. Pretty much as long as you're interested in dancing with her, she will dance with you. So she's pretty high energy. The macaw species do vary a little bit in terms of their behaviors, and I would say that green wings can be higher energy and a bit louder. They're a bit more.
Here I see.
Here we go. Here's the party starting. Yeah, and she just loves doing that, and if you do it with her, that's even more fun. So
I see how she's stopping and looking at the camera like,
yeah, she's like, you joining in, you want to dance, oh yeah. I mean, they'll pick up and cue a lot off of you, so you can just let them kind of hang out at party level 1, or you can dance with them and notch things up to party levels 2 and above.
It looks like she has a number of toys in her cage as well.
Yeah, she's pretty I mean, it's really important that macaws have a variety of different toys to keep them enriched. So some toys they can chew on. You can see she's enjoying cardboard toys, but also some wooden toys is great because they have pretty powerful beaks and they really enjoy splintering up chunks of wood. They don't have to be fancy toys. Literally just plain 2x4s from your local Home Depot will work. Something they can splinter up and keep those beaks busy and out of trouble. So yeah, a variety of toys, maybe even a foraging toy where she has to work a little bit to get a treat out of the middle of it is another good idea. Swings or boings can be really popular with macaws as well, which is also a good workout for them. So you can see she's got that rope perch, which is kind of hanging like a swing, so she can step through it, she can hang on it. And obviously a really nice big cage so that she's got some space to move around even when she's still inside.
Yeah, looks like she would make all use of it.
Yeah, and she's a pretty good bird about hanging out on her door. If you open the door and let her out, she's pretty good about not running off and exploring all over. She'll happily hang out on her cage door or play stand. So obviously you have to supervise her because macaws can get up to all kinds of mischief. But she's obviously, they need company attention, and it's really important to emphasize with macaws that they need a lot of your time. They're deeply social, and they need a flock. If they don't have other birds, then that's you, and so that means that you've got to acknowledge them, and that's really important for them.
So we've talked a lot about managing Ruby's hormones and about her emotional and sort of intellectual needs here and interacting with people. Does Ruby need any other types of special care?
Maybe just paying a little bit of attention. I don't know if you can see in the video, but she's actually missing some toes on her left foot.
I hadn't noticed it, but now that you pointed out, I did see it.
Yeah, she's missing just a couple of toes, which is honestly not a big deal and very common. A lot of birds, sometimes even just as little chicks in the, when they hatch, either the parents or other birds can end up nipping off toes. That doesn't happen. She gets around just fine. But you may want to consider more rope perches or grippy perches and being, careful when she steps up for you to make sure that she's completely stable, and she may use her beak a bit more to stabilize as a result. So you have to just be ready for that and understand that's what she's doing.
Got it. So now I know we're going to move on to watch a video of another macaw named Harriet, but before we do that, are there any last things you'd like to tell us about Ruby?
Just, I think, to emphasize that anyone taking her on would need to be very observant of the hormonal cycle and very committed to making sure she gets, her regular checkups, and also managing her environment to make sure she doesn't go through a prolonged egg laying period again. You mentioned earlier about her being beakier and harder to handle. It's in your interests, not just for her health and all the medical bills that would come with that, but also, making sure that she's comfortable. And when she's hormonal, all parrots are beakier and can be much harder to manage. She, when she was surrendered to us, the person who transported her was bitten and had to go get stitches. So, and a lot of that was related to the fact she was very hormonal at the time from that period of intense egg laying. So yeah, really important to be aware of that. But she's a really sweet bird, and with good care and a home that's well educated and prepared for her. She's, as you can see, she's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And she's pretty.
She's beautiful. Yeah, she really is.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on to meet Harriet now?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Harriet. Let me just get her up on the screen here so that we can all see her. So Harriet's a little bit older. And I'm just
based on the name, I'm guessing a girl. Do we know?
We do. And yes, she is female.
Got it.
So here's Harriet. Harriet is in her 40s. So she's about twice the age of Ruby. But again,
still pretty young based on what you were just saying.
Still really just honestly middle-aged, she's kind of like at the 50% stage, and she's a lot more chill. And also being a blue and gold, she, as a species, they're a little bit more chill anyway. So we tend to find the green wings are a bit louder, do all the dance moves, and are much higher energy. But blue and golds tend to just hang out a lot more. They will dance for sure. They can pick up some dance moves and they can get hyped up, but usually it's not as much of a strong streak in them. You have to kind of, party with them a bit more to get them going. Harriet does this little side wobble. You can see she's kind of rocking. That's her dance move.
It's pretty sedate compared to Ruby.
Yeah. I mean, she definitely moves more slowly. You can see in her cage set up here, she's got twisted sisal rope as her main perch, and she has a cross. You can see when she moved there, she used her beak to hang on to the cross rope as she stepped over to go and get some more food. And that's not just for comfort. She's doing that for balance, because she moves more slowly. She doesn't have any chronic health issues. She did have a respiratory infection when she came into us. We rescued her from a shelter where they had 9 parrots that had come in after the owner had passed away. And unfortunately, there had been no provision made by the owner for what should happen to the birds in the event of her death. And so the shelter was working. They did a great job, they did work with us, and we had information about all of the birds, and they began working on finding homes for them. The ones that were younger and in full health were, I think all but 2 were adopted out by the shelter with our support. We took in 2, and Harriet is one of those that we're talking about today. So she had a respiratory infection that she'd been living with, and after that got treated. Now she's fine. She's just kind of a chill, slower mover who just is looking for someone to hang out with her in a fairly kind of peaceful home. She's used to having other birds around, but I don't think she minds too much as long as she's got attention from somebody.
Okay. Quick reminder for our audience that you can type any questions you may have about Harriet into the Q&A on Zoom or into the live stream on Facebook. And that does go for Ruby as well. I almost said her name. Is Harriet tame?
She does know how to step up, but she's pretty wary of new people. I have spent some time with her and just talking to her and feeding her treats. In fact, I think later on in this video, there's a little moment where you might see I have her cage door open, and I walk up to her and give her a little treat, and she'll happily take treats from your hands. I think she would step up for somebody once she had the opportunity to settle in with you. She was interested in getting, oh, you can see her legs reaching through the bars here.
Oh yeah.
She's kind of like, she's trying to figure out how she could hang out with me through the bars. And it's a little hard to see in the video, but she keeps putting a leg through the bars there. She's
Oh, there it is.
She's reaching out. So she's interested in stepping up and having contact, and she let me scratch her head a little too. But she was also very cautious because this was our first visit spending time together. So I was a complete stranger, just kind of wheeling her into a room and talking to her in literally like the first 30 minutes that we'd met. So she was naturally a little bit wary of that. And you can see her picking her foot up, like she's like, do I want to step up for you? Well, maybe. I just, like a lot of birds, they are very individual, and they want to have a flock and they want to be social, but they're prey in the wild. They're naturally cautious, and they need to get to know you until they decide that you're not a predator.
Yeah.
And we kind of look like scary predators to them. So we have to kind of work on it a little bit.
We do have an audience question here. Does Harriet talk?
She doesn't talk a whole lot. She's got little vocalizations that she makes. But she's pretty quiet for the most part. It's very possible that over time in your household, you might see her start to share a little bit more of her past and her vocabulary with you. We've found that in a lot of older birds, is that, obviously, unfortunately, even though we do our best for them and we give them, a great diet and good medical care, we are still unfortunately moving them around. And so they don't always settle as quickly as they would in an adopted home. And so we don't hear their full personality or their full vocabulary as quickly. We've had a lot of people telling us once the bird's adopted, 6 months, 12 months down the line, they start coming out with all kinds of things that we haven't heard. And some of that might even be things you say to them. I've fostered several macaws where they've picked up some of the hums and ha's and little phrases that I say to them a lot. So even though she's older, that doesn't mean that she can't learn more new phrases too. We see a lot of Amazons and macaws that learn the names of your family members or the names of your pet dog or anything that you tend to say a lot around them. And all the usual hello and bye-bye. So she hasn't revealed an extensive repertoire at the moment, but that's not the optimal conditions for her to do so either. So there might be keeping up of her proverbial sleeve.
Got it. We've seen her eating a bit here and there in the video, and I see now she's over by her food dishes again. What kind of a diet does Harriet have?
Harriet's on a really good diet of Harrison's pellets with some nuts and fruit and vegetables and a few treats. She's a really good eater. You could see earlier she was going over and picking up her Harrison's pellets. She's on the large coarse pellets. I think this is where I offer her a little piece of walnut. It's just a little. It's not a big piece, but that's all it takes. You just offer them a little, and she's hanging on. You can see her kind of hanging onto the cage a little just to steady herself. And then she reaches over and takes it. So she's very gentle, and she's really good about eating her pellets. She'll hold them in her foot and munch through one coarse big pellet at a time. And then she eats her veggies as well. So she's pretty good with carrot and pepper and a lot of the usual popular veggies that we get our birds to try.
I saw her sort of poof up her head feathers there as she was considering whether to take that nut from you too.
Yeah, and they have a lot of control over feather posture. It's one of the really useful things, that they're quite expressive. They maybe don't have the same facial expressions you might be used to in people or dogs or other mammals, but you can tell a lot from their body movement and their feather posture. And that's often a big clue as to how relaxed they are, how excited they are. So you can see she's doing a lot of, she gets really agitated there because I was approaching her with a perch to see if she would want to step up. And she was like, no, I don't want that. So I took it away again. And then
she looks pretty calm again. I mean, she's excited.
Yeah. I mean, there's a
What
difference.
is that out there?
Yeah. She's like, I don't know what to do with you. What are you trying to do? I mean, unfortunately, being at the vet, they take her out regularly for weighing her, and she was on medication for a while. And so they were having to put her in a towel. And
Mm-hmm.
when you approach her in that building, she assumes you're going to try and towel her for medication. So we're just having to work with that right now. But she's ready to move to a home. She doesn't need to be at the vet anymore. She's just there because she's got the company of other macaws, and we're working on getting more foster homes available.
Yeah. So yes, I should have mentioned earlier, the process to foster and adopt is pretty much the same. It's just at the end, whether you're making a permanent commitment to the birds or a commitment to help the birds move to their permanent homes. We do have another audience question. Does she have any medical issues?
Nothing serious, just aging, really. She's just
I'm feeling that one myself.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that a little bit at some point.
Yeah.
That's her taking a little bit of apple. She's not on any medication. She doesn't need anything other than a setup where maybe she's got more of those rope perches rather than wood ones, so that it's more comfortable for her. And a setup where there's a lot of them at good angles, so she can climb around comfortably without having to do any big stretches. And if you were to take her out, to make sure that you gave her a really comfortable, stable play stand or platform, or if you're holding her, move really slowly. I don't think you could dance around with her on your shoulder like a younger bird, because she would feel unstable and she would be worried about falling. So yeah, you just have to give her a lot of stability and comfort and space, but no chronic issues with heart conditions or anything of that kind.
Great. So in just a minute, we're going to move on to some much smaller birds, a pair of budgies. But before we do that, are there any last things you'd like to tell us about Harriet?
No, just a reminder that even though she's in her 40s, she's got a good 20 to 30 years ahead of her. And it would be really important for her to have her annual health checks with a certified avian vet. I mean, that's important for all parrots, but keeping her on those Harrison's pellets that she's eating there and ensuring she gets her annual health checkups would be really, really important for her. So we just want to emphasize that, as always.
Got it. Well, thank you, Sarah, for introducing us first to Ruby and then now to Harriet.
That's a pleasure.
Lovely meeting them both.
Thanks. Please consider fostering a macaw. We recommend it.
So now we're ready to meet a pair of budgies. This is Lemonade and Dandelion. So hi, Jamie.
Hello.
Can you introduce us to these two little budgies?
Yes, indeed. I think they sort of fell asleep a little bit while we were all watching and hearing about the macaws. They were napping, but they're sort of coming to now. On the left of your screen, that's Lemonade. And Lemonade is at this point presumed to be a male, but we're not entirely sure. As you can see, this is a very pale yellow bird. This is called a dilute coloring. And when a bird has a dilute coloring, it's not like albinism, not like being an albino, but it is sort of like that in that it's lacking some of the darker colorations. So far less striping on this bird than on the other. And so Lemonade has neither a blue nor a brown nair, that skin part that's at the top of the beak. And so it's more like a cream and lavender. And so we're just not entirely sure, but we've decided that more likely male than female. So Lemonade, we're using he and him as our pronouns.
Okay.
Lemonade. And
how about Dandelion?
And then Dandelion on the right here is a female who we're fairly certain about that. All the coloration suggests it and the behaviors as well. And Dandelion, as you can see, has a lot more striping on the back, but not as much as some of the other birds that you'll see. So we have a male and a female in a cage together, and you might ask, what's to prevent them from reproducing? We just don't provide that sort of environment. So there are no nesting areas in here, and these two are just friends. We don't know their age. Well, actually we do. Dandelion lived with the previous owner for about 6 years. And so Dandelion is about 6 years old, and was surrendered because he could no longer care for her the way that he wanted to due to his work and so forth. So he chose to do the right thing and try to find her a home that could pay more attention to her. Lemonade was surrendered at a shelter in Sacramento with an injured wing. And if you look, you can see that the wing is drooping a little bit on Lemonade, the one on the left. It wasn't broken, but it was injured and painful. And so when we picked Lemonade up, we brought Lemonade to a fine avian veterinarian in Oakley, California. The wing was wrapped and immobilized for a couple of weeks, and I administered pain medications to Lemonade for a period of time. And then when that course had run, we went back to the veterinarian and had the wrapping removed. There doesn't seem to be any pain anymore, but the wing does have sort of a permanent droop. It does not prevent Lemonade from flying. Lemonade is still able to flit and fly around the cage.
Budgies are amazingly good flyers.
Yes, they are.
I'm hearing from our support team as people are watching this video at home, the image is flipped. So actually the male for Dandelion is on your right with the droopy wing, and the female bird Lemonade right is on your left, and she has the darker color on her wings. So that's
that's interesting. I don't know how that mirroring is happening. I apologize for that.
That's okay. I think it's pretty easy once we realize what's going on. We do have an audience question, and as a reminder for the rest of our audience, type your questions into Q&A on Zoom or the live stream on Facebook. People would like to know, do these birds talk?
Do you know, these two individuals do not talk that I have heard, but here's the thing about budgies. They have itsy bitsy teeny weeny voices, and they're actually known to be some of the best talking birds, but most people don't understand that they're talking. You have to really listen. I have never heard anything that sounded like either bird was trying to speak, but they have lovely little voices. They chirp and sing and make just a really musical sound here in our home, along with 2 other budgies that I am fostering. So speech, no. Song and joyful noise, yes.
Are they tame?
These 2 individuals, Lemonade is very afraid of the hand still. And I don't know if over time that will change. Dandelion does come to the hand and was a pet for those 6 years, and enjoys sitting on the hand on your finger and taking bits of treats, little bits of herbs that I get out of my garden, or tiny bits of seed. So yes, Dandelion does seem to enjoy being held under her own terms. Lemonade, not so much.
That's fair.
So these 2 came from different places at different times. They have settled in as friends. Budgies do like to be in a flock. They're very much flock birds in the wild. And so we want to have at least 2 together, but more is better. They enjoy the safety in numbers and the the socialization opportunities that they get with each other. Budgies are funny. They'll have a terrible squawking quarrel and then be snuggling up and kissing afterwards. Lots of drama sometimes in the cage.
I have a cage of foster budgies, and I can confirm all of this is true. We've got another audience question now of, can they be adopted separately or are they bonded?
I would not say they are bonded. And so I would qualify that by saying, yes, they could be adopted separately, but we would want a single budgie to be adopted into a home where there would be the company of another. We do not like to place these flock birds alone, to live alone in a cage. That's not a good situation for them mentally.
Yeah, if any of our viewers wonder about that, I would just encourage you to look at some video of wild budgies. Just go on YouTube and search and take a look, and you'll see the large groups that they live in and how incredibly interactive they are with each other. They belong in groups, and we do ensure that for their own satisfaction and quality of life. What kinds of activities or toys do Lemonade and Dandelion enjoy?
You can see one of the ones they enjoy right here. I buy those sponges, the loofah sponges, whole, and then I use my bread knife and cut them into strips like this. It's an inexpensive, fun toy that's very shreddable and safe. All of my budgies enjoy picking at those and just tearing them into pieces over the course of weeks rather than, minutes, as you would find with a larger beaked bird. But they'll work it and work it and work it until it's in a big pile on the floor of the cage. You can see a little bell there. I can't turn the camera without the camera accidentally turning off. It's inside their cage right now, but they also like the kind of raffia ties that you would put on packages. I tie those in knots and bows and place them around the cage. They like to floss those with their beak or tear them apart. They like, these two are very fond of mirrors, and I don't know if they spent a lot of time with mirrors before, but they have several toys that have moving parts that they can manipulate with their beak and see themselves at the same time. So little things they can flip and turn and so forth. And they have a little bathtub shaped toy in the bottom with a mirror in the bottom of it. And I fill it with a bit of water and they go down there for their baths.
Got it.
They like to ring bells. And they mostly like to play with each other. Yeah. Again, to adopting to have an end result of at least 2 budgies in your home. Yeah. We do have an audience question about how long budgies live. And I know it's a pretty wide range. It is. It can be anywhere from 7 years up to 20. And it really depends on the quality of life that they have been given. So you can find some budgies can be very long-lived, but on the other hand, if you feed them a diet of just seed their whole lives, that's a very high-fat diet, and you'll end up with heart problems and a much shorter life. In the wild, they're constantly on the move and flying distances and expending that energy. But in this kind of a setting, it's too much fat and it will shorten their lives. So these guys get some seed, some herbs, some bits of fruit and vegetable. They're a bit wary of the vegetables, but are starting to nibble at herbs from my organic garden. Got it. Anybody, are there any other questions that have come from the audience? There is one more, and then pretty shortly we're going to move on and meet a couple of cockatiels. You bet. But how old is Dandelion? I know that you gave us an estimate, but I cannot recall. 6 years. This Dandelion lived with her owner for 6 years, and so she would still be just a smidge over that. Not 7 yet, I don't think. And we don't know about Lemonade. Okay.
So we're going to move on now to meet a couple cockatiels named Cinnamon and Spice. So thank you so much, Jamie, for introducing us to these lovely budgies, my personal favorite birds. So we're going to watch a video here of Cinnamon and Spice. And as we begin, let me just remind everyone, go ahead and ask any questions you may have by typing them into the Q&A. Or if you're watching us on Facebook, right into the live stream. So here are Cinnamon and Spice, and I believe that we have Pam on the line to talk to us about them. So hi, Pam.
Hi, Katie.
Can you tell us a little bit about these two cockatiels? They're very cute.
They are very cute. On your right is a gray cockatiel. Her name is Cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
Very definitely a female. She has laid eggs for us in the past. Now in the foreground, you see a pied cockatiel.
Mm-hmm.
Name is Spice. And he's got just a beautiful coloration around his head, as you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now he's getting away from the camera ever so slightly and giving us a view of his back. So you can see why he's called a pied. He's got that different, white and yellow mottled into his dark gray there, as opposed to Cinnamon, who has the more normal gray coloration. And he's basically telling her, I want to sit right there. Get out of my way.
That is a thing that I feel like cockatiels do a lot of. They're kind of like the jokes about old married couples who bicker all the time, but wouldn't know what to do without each other. I feel like
yeah, like, and they are definitely bonded. There was.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah, and there was a time after I got them from the vet clinic where there was a concern that Cinnamon was guarding the food bowls and not letting Spice eat. And so I housed them in two cages next to each other just so I could, make sure that Spice was getting enough to eat and monitor the situation. And throughout the whole day, they would sit in the portion of their cages that were the closest to each other. Yep, exactly. And be calling back and forth to each other, not in panic because they could see each other, but just contact calls back and forth. And
hey, this is weird. How is it over there on that side of the bars?
Right. So I recently moved them together into the same cage with a special food bowl setup to deal with the food guarding situation. And also am watching how they take food from their bowls so that I don't get inadvertently surprised by somebody being starved to death.
Yeah.
And they've reverted to their normal, married couple behaviors. And what's very sweet is that at night when they go to bed, they have a favorite sleeping spot, and it's on the rightmost wooden perch that you see now. Spice will be, sorry, fire engine running by.
That's okay.
That go. So Spice will be at the far end of that perch, and Cinnamon will be pointed in the other direction. So Spice is facing forward, Cinnamon is facing backward with their left wings touching each other. She's not pushing him, they're just touching, they're there with each other. And it's so sweet. And they do that night after night after night. It is their sleeping positions, their version of spooning or something.
So it looks like they have a variety of chewy materials in their toys here.
Yes.
What kinds of toys and activities do they like during the day?
They actually don't interact with toys so much as they interact with each other. To the extent that they interact with toys, there's the low-tech toy that I haven't pictured here. It's a folded envelope that came in the mail. tossed out the innards, folded the envelope, stuck it through the cages, and they enjoy shredding that. They also have some toys that are specifically shreddy. You can see that they've already taken, 2 or 3 notches off of the leather strip toy with the chewy things that are poking.
Yeah, and I see that the ones that are on there are looking pretty frayed.
They're used as well.
Like we have nice neat knots on the side that's facing us.
Yeah.
And it looks like the rope is very shredded up on the other side.
Yeah, so they're working at it. Yep. And then
so we're getting a couple audience questions here.
Yes.
How old are they? And do they have any particular medical issues, especially with the egg laying?
So in order, they are 13 and 11 years old, roughly speaking. So that for a cockatiel, that's about midlife. We've had cockatiels that have been rescued by Mickaboo that were in their early 30s. And that's like saying 100 for a person, right? Our life expectancy is 80, that's an average. But we all know people who have gone over, and we all know people, sadly, who have fallen under that. So 30 is at the way far end of things. But these guys are, I would call them, midlife, roughly. Lots of good years ahead of them. In terms of medical issues, we're past needing daily anything. So we don't have any active medical intervention underway. So now we're at the normal, watch your birds, look for the normal signs of illness, etc. And in particular with behavioral issues, again, making sure that the male, who's on our left here, is getting enough food and is not being herded away from the food bowls by the female. And that's through direct observation is the easiest way that I can do that. And there's also weighing the bird every now and again to make sure that they're not going dangerously below their optimum weight.
Yeah, weighing birds is a fantastic way to have a preview of any health issues that may be coming before, while you can still solve them.
Yes.
Highly recommended.
Yeah. There's the question about the egg laying, and it's an interesting question because I caught these 2 birds within a few days of moving them to a new environment, i.e. this cage. I caught them what I call stack dancing, which is, them having a fling at it, as it were. And you can kind of tell because the vocalizations that come from them are markedly different than their normal contact calls or their normal alarm calls. It's very different. So when I heard that, I knew what it was and said, okay, stop doing that now. And so they did that a couple times in a row. And I think that's because I was so concerned about them getting enough to eat after I changed their environment entirely. I went from them being in the basement to being up on the living quarters, much more light, same cage instead of 2 cages, that I gave them, the millet sprig that you see hanging there after they were eating, because initially for the first several hours they were not eating. And I was, so dancing between a couple of different issues. So after I saw them stack dancing and confirming that they were very comfortable in their new place, took the millet away, went back to the pellet diet, specifically Nutrien, that they were on, and watched them carefully to make sure that my strategy about the food bowls was leaving enough food for Spice.
Got it. I understand that Cinnamon and Spice have been with Mickaboo for quite some time, and that they've had other foster homes previous. Can you tell us about how they came to Mickaboo?
Yes, I understand that they were part of an aviary rescue about 10 years ago. And there were approximately 16 cockatiels in an aviary. The homeowner was selling their residence, and they called Mickaboo and said something very much like, if you don't come and get these birds, today, tomorrow. It was very short notice. We're going to let them go. We're going to open up the aviary door and let the birds fend for themselves, which is pretty close to being a death sentence.
I was about to say that's a death sentence. Yeah, between
this
is not their native environment.
Right.
Anything to eat. If they survive being hawk food, they're going to starve to death.
Yeah, I mean, because they had no training in how to find their own food. In the aviary, they were given food. How do you find your own food in the wild? Don't know how to look for predators or how to deal with predators. So, if anybody is out there thinking that opening a door or a window to release your bird, the saying that we have is that they're not flying free, they're becoming free food, as you say, for the hawks and eagles and whatnot, other predators out there.
Yeah. I think it's not always intuitive to people because you walk out your door and you see birds everywhere, but those are birds that are native or naturalized to this area, that have a flock, that have got the muscle tone, that so many things that our pet birds do not have.
Right, exactly. I mean, if you were to plunk me, out of my very comfortable home here into the middle of, the wilderness, and said, go for it. I know what's safe to eat, what's not safe to eat. I might survive for a while if I can find some running water, but that's, not gonna be a good situation after a while.
Well, we're about to move on to meet our last pair of birds, but before we do that, are there any last things you'd like to tell us about Cinnamon and Spice?
They are a pair of very nice low-key birds. They're wonderful to have for my Zoom calls because they are not very loud and they provide a little bit of interesting background for people who see them, as opposed to the conures that you're going to come up to next, which are a little bit more vocally present, I'll call it.
They are.
And these folks that we have here, Cinnamon and Spice, they will definitely remind me in the morning that they want their breakfast. And in the evening, they will remind me that they want their dinner. They get meal fed twice a day. And in the interim, if there's an earthquake, because we do get shaken up here a little bit now and again, they are great earthquake monitors, even for the ones that I don't feel. But I'll turn on the radio, and USGS says that there's a 4.1 somewhere in the East Bay, perhaps, and they found it. I think. So they're quite good birds, relatively low maintenance, and beautiful to watch and have in one's home.
Oh, and Spice is doing the little heart wings thing there that male cockatiels do. That's so cute. Yeah. Oh, well, that's a really sweet image to leave you three on. So thank you so much, Pam. Next, we're going to meet a pair of conures, Yeshe and Chester, and this is a live session. So here they are. Hello again, Sarah.
Hi, Katie. Hello. Me again. This time with some real birds in my house.
And this time in person. Well, in the feather.
Yes, in some feather.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about these two birds?
Yeah, of course. We are looking at two blue-crowned conures by the name of Yeshe and Chester. Yeshe is the conure on the right, who's got the bald shoulders. And then Chester is the fully feathered guy hanging out behind him.
Great. And a reminder to our audience, if you have questions about Yeshe and Chester or about the other birds that we've already met, go ahead and type them in the Q&A box here on Zoom. Do we know if Yeshe and Chester are boys or girls or unknown?
We believe that they are both boys. Yeah, they're best buddies.
Are they a bonded pair then?
They are. They share the same cage. and they hang out together all the time, and they preen each other. When they go to sleep and roost for the night, they hang out snuggled up together next to each other on the same perch. They are definitely a bonded pair, and we would absolutely need them to be adopted together.
Got it. How old are they?
They're about 18 years old, both of them. Yeah.
So as with the other birds that we've met today, does that mean that they're about middle age, or are they still on the younger side?
Yeah, they're about middle aged. I mean, most blue-crowned conures, we would expect them to live to be, with good care and diet, somewhere up to 25, 30 years old. So yeah, they're kind of, but they're halfway point, fingers crossed.
It looks like, is that Yeshe is the one with the bald spots on his wings?
That's right. That's Yeshe on the right with the plucked shoulders.
Chowing down on something.
They are. They love. This is a bit strategic. I've given them a little bit more fruit than usual, so they have some yummy chunks of apple and a little bit of walnut. So yeah, that's what they're snacking on right now.
Got it. What do they usually eat?
Usually they eat some really nice pellets. They are on Harrison's pellets, which are the healthiest ones for them. They also have a little bit of Supreme pellets as well. And they're really good veggie eaters. So they're having a pretty healthy diet and also a lot of veggies. They eat loads of good veggies. Pretty much breakfast is pellets with some nuts. And then we give them some veggies in the mid-afternoon. We mix some grains in there so they get a little bit of chop. And then a little last dinner of pellets in the evening. So they're really good eaters. They are a little bit picky about the veggies and even some of the fruit. I've had Yeshe, I held out a bit of strawberry to him the other day and he went, and then he immediately took it from my fingers and threw it on the floor. So they're quite colorful characters. They're quite entertaining. They are pretty good eaters, but sometimes they'll just decide they don't want something.
Well, I guess we all have those days too, when we might look right past the packet of strawberries and go for blueberries
some
instead.
Days you're just
something.
not feeling it. Yeah, it's fair enough. They have a lot of individual preferences, like all parrots. So yeah.
Are they tame?
Yes, they are. But they don't always feel like stepping up. So they're not
again with the preferences.
Oh yes, yeah, they have pretty strong personalities. They know how to step up, and they will step up for you when they want to. Most commonly for me, that is when they want to go somewhere. So Yeshe is a little bit less sure-footed. He tends not to. He climbs around no problem, but he's slower and he's more careful. And so, you can see they're on that play stand there. When I put their food bowls, usually in the morning, I put their breakfast back inside the cage once they've been out for a while. And that's how I get them to go back in. And Yeshe, if he's at the far end of the play stand, he knows and is able, he's perfectly capable of climbing back himself, but it's harder work than just having me carry him. So he'll kind of look at me like, can I get a lift? And then I can put my hand out, and it's kind of cute. Every time that Yeshe steps up, he puts his beak on your hand first as a little resting stepping stone. So he kind of leans his beak so that his weight is transferring onto your hand already. And then he steps forward with his feet, which is quite common. A lot of older birds or more wobbly birds will do that with their beaks as a way to just sort of transfer more carefully across and put their weight onto your hand or your arm. He does that a lot. That's his kind of signature step up, is to use his beak first. And it's the front of his beak. It's not like he's biting you or even holding on. He's just leaning on you. And then Chester, if he flies around, which he does like to do every now and then, if he's on the, he'll fly through a couple of rooms and find himself somewhere strange, and then he just kind of starts yelling until I come and get him. Yeah, come get me. And then I can carry him I can carry him back to the cage, and they will walk up your arm and they'll hang out on your shoulder. Chester has bitten me on the neck though. He was just so excited. He just like walked straight up my arm onto my shoulder and then started nipping on my neck. So they can get a little hyped up too.
Sure.
Yeah.
What are their favorite activities? I see it looks like Chester's going back into all those lovely toys.
Yeah, their favorite thing are the yucca toys. I think they've got 3 hanging in there right now, and they're just some simple stacks of yucca discs on a little bit of rope. And they just love shredding those up. So those are their favorite toys. But they just love hanging out on top of their cage. They do get excited and fly. They can both fly. Usually once one of them takes off, the other one will follow almost immediately. But they don't necessarily land in the same place. It's pretty common. Yeshe will take off and disappear around the corner, and then Yeshe just flies wherever he goes. And then you have to play hide and seek. And, I've got, Yeshe on one hand, and then eventually I find Chester and I have him in the other, and then I just carry them back to their cage. So it's like a little birdie treasure hunt for a couple of minutes whilst you pick them up and find them. But that works fine. And they enjoy the excitement of it. Obviously, if you had other birds, you need to be careful they don't land on their cage and get their toes nipped by anybody.
Sure. Yeah. But those of us who have lots of birds.
Yes, that is an important safety aspect.
It really is, yes.
And, if you have ceiling fans or other potential hazards in your home, you need to make sure that the whole house is safe before they get out, because they will explore.
Yeah.
But yeah, shredding their yucca toys, hanging out in their cage, hanging out in the play stand, and preening each other. It's pretty much their favorite pastime.
How did they come to Mickaboo?
They came to Mickaboo after being with an adopted home for about, I think, somewhere between 8 and 10 years. They were adopted by someone who had several other blue-crowned conures, and so they paired up in their last adopted home. They've had a few homes already in their lives, but their last owner was taking great care of them and had several blue-crowned conures, and that was how they found each other and became a pair. Unfortunately, just through accommodation circumstances, that person has had to move and was not able to keep all of the birds that they had, which is something that we see, fairly frequently. Unfortunately, accommodation, having birds is a big demand on your space and your time, and there's a noise concern. And so depending on your living circumstances, you won't be able to have birds easily in an apartment often. And if you have landlords or any other constraints like that, or roommates, there are noise and safety and permission concerns.
Yeah. So they had to feel like our human lives are not as stable as we sometimes think they're going to be when we make commitments.
Well, this is the challenge with parrots. They're so long-lived that even when you are in a fairly stable situation, they live so long that it can be, 10, 15 years later, and you just don't know, anything can happen to anyone. So life is full of surprises, and parrots, have a lot of needs. So that is one of the reasons the Mickaboo exists. Yeah.
And also one of the reasons why we have a policy that once a Mickaboo bird, you are always a Mickaboo bird. And that if your home cannot keep you, the bird will come back to us, and we will work on finding them another home.
Always. We take that commitment really seriously. And so, that's not an infrequent thing, unfortunately. We do our best to make sure that anyone adopting from us understands, what the kind of commitment they're making. But even so, the best of intentions, we have to take back Mickaboo birds that we've adopted out every year. And we're always there for them.
Yeah. As a reminder to our audience, we are getting close to the end of our time here, but if you have any questions about Yeshe and Chester, please do type them into the Q&A. Sarah, you mentioned one thing that I feel like we should talk about a little bit more, which is noise and conures. I think of conures as being incredibly, incredibly loud, but I know that I'm probably thinking of suns and gen days when I say that. How loud are these two?
They're fairly loud. They're being really good right now and just preening and eating.
Mm-hmm.
But they are, when they get excited, they have a yell that they make, which is fairly high pitched and quite loud. And they also have a frequent dialogue when they're preening each other. Yeshe is apparently not very good at preening Chester by Chester standards, because fairly regularly Yeshe will be trying his best to preen Chester's head, and then Chester will complain because he's clearly done something wrong or touched a sensitive feather. And his customer feedback is just to yell extensively in Yeshe's face until he stops or switches feathers, and it's pretty loud. So they're really sweet, and they have a lot of little vocalizations and talking. Yeshe is actually a pretty good talker. He's got a lot of little phrases, and Chester also will say hello, and apparently he says I like it, but I haven't heard that personally yet.
Oh, interesting.
But Yeshe will say his catchphrase is hello elephant walk, because I think originally he was bought from a pet store named Elephant Walk. And they would answer the phone when it rang and say hello elephant walk, and that was what Yeshe heard every day. So he started saying,
paying attention.
Yeah, so sometimes I walk up to them and he just looks at me and he goes elephant walk, hello elephant walk, and it's really cute. If you say it to him, sometimes he repeats it back to you in his little conure voice. So it's pretty cute, but they can be pretty loud. I wouldn't recommend them in an apartment for that reason.
Got it. We are just about out of time, but we do have a couple of questions from our audience about Yeshe. What happened to Yeshe's feathers, and can they grow back?
Yeshe plucked a long time ago. That the theory that we have from the former home is that it was a reaction of some sort to some diet changes. I mean, obviously, it was a long time ago. We have not seen any problems recently for a very long time. He's been fine for years. So there's no serious health issue or underlying problem. It was a one-off event where he seemed to react to something that he was being fed or he was eating. He was taken to Wildwood Vet about it, and they helped resolve the issues. The theory is that it was allergy related. So unfortunately, it went on long enough that the follicles are damaged, and his bald patches now are going to be permanent.
Got it.
But he can still fly just fine, despite looking pretty plucked up there. He's got all of his wing feathers, and he doesn't mind at all. So yeah, there's nothing permanently health-wise going on with him at this point. He's just got his own unique style at this point, and those feathers are not going to grow back at this stage.
Well, thank you. We're about out of time, but are there any last things you would like to tell us about Yeshe and Chester?
Just that even though they're a pair, and so obviously they get a lot of enrichment from each other, they are very engaged with people and they enjoy attention from humans. So even if you had them as a pair, you still need to be prepared to spend a significant amount of time letting them out of their cage, ensuring that they're able to have a lot of enrichment and changing their cage setup. So whilst it does help, they have each other. They do, they're very habituated to engaging with people as well, and you would need to make sure that you could provide that for them too. Great.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for introducing us to Yeshe and Chester. They make a terrific last act for this virtual adoption fair.
They have a lot of personality. I have to say I've fostered a lot of conures and I find them very entertaining. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. So that's all the birds we have time to meet today. If you fell in love with one of these birds, please go ahead and contact us. If you haven't started the adoption process, you can get started by signing up for our basic bird care class at mickaboo.org/basic bird care class. And you see the URL there behind me. It's offered every 2 weeks. The next one is coming up on Sunday, the 5th of September. If none of these birds seemed like the right bird for your home, please do take a look at the other birds on our website. As I mentioned before, we have over 300, so we may have just the bird for you. If we are also going to be offering our next virtual adoption fair at the end of September on the 29th, so you can meet some other birds at that time. Thank you for coming and joining us this afternoon. We're really looking forward to seeing you again next month. If you'd like to join us, more macaws coming next month. Please do remember that we are a donation-funded nonprofit. You can support this work of parrot rescue at mickaboo.org/donate or at paypal.me/mickaboo. We would be grateful for your support. It will help us to care for all the birds like the ones you met today, many of whom have benefited from medical care during their time with us. I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to all of our foster parents and the birds who joined us today, both on video and live, and all the other volunteers who helped this event to run smoothly. It takes a lot of technical support, and I have many people standing behind me who have helped make this a great afternoon for you all. Please stick with us through the credits to see who everyone was, and we will go ahead and keep monitoring the Q&A for a little bit longer in case you have questions we haven't answered yet. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be sharing a survey with you so that we can get feedback to improve this event for the future.